So you've all read the title. Is it true then? Is Resident Evil 4, the original, overrated? A game absolutely adored by countless fans. A timeless classic in a lot of people's eyes. A true masterpiece of the genre. One of the best games of all time. A game that will live on forever in people's hearts. A game that is still to this day being enjoyed by millions of loyal fans. A game that was recently remade just a couple of years ago that, in a lot of people's eyes, was better than this game. But it all comes down to that one question. Is this game overrated? Well, let's talk about that a little bit today. So before I actually get to Ori 4, let's do a little bit of a recap of the Resident Evil franchise. So in 1996, the start of a legendary franchise was born, and even to this day, it's still going. Not so strong, if you ask me, but it's still got a huge fan base. It was one of the first franchises to really go mainstream, to really go somewhere with the genre, innovate, and actually bring it to a wider audience. You had games before that, but they weren't quite as big as this game was. Didn't quite leave the footprint that this one did. And then a couple of years later, we had Resident Evil 2, which was arguably even better. If you ask me, it was. Quite possibly one of the best horror games of all time. An easy 9 out of 10. A classic in the genre, in the series. Another game that was remade, along with the first game. And then a year after that, you had Ori 3, which was set at the same time as Ori 2, but changed things up a little bit, made it a bit more action-packed, introduced the legendary Nemesis, introduced some more action elements with dodge rolls and explosive barrels and such. Or at least I think there was explosive barrels. It has been a hot minute since I played that game. And then a year after that, or was it 2 years later, either 2000 or 2001, we had quite possibly my favourite Resident Evil game, which is Code Veronica. Not quite as adored as the previous games. Definitely didn't sit well with some people due to its cheesy voice acting. Maybe even took a step back in some people's eyes. And then after that, we had the remake of Resident Evil 1, which was, let's be honest, better than the original. A perfect example of how to do a remake. Easily one of the best ones out there. And then you also had Resident Evil 0, which was sort of a remake too. Not technically, but kind of, because Ori 0 was actually supposed to be a game that would come out on N64, I believe, but it never got released. So at that point, we had a lot of Resident Evil games, and for a lot of people, the series was getting a little old, getting a little stale. So in 2005, the series changed forever and brought us Resident Evil 4, which in a lot of people's eyes is the best game in the series, and it's hard to really argue with that. Now, putting aside my feelings towards the change in pacing, change in action, change in tone, change in, let's be honest, everything, and straying away from what made the games popular to begin with, and how I feel it really wasn't the same anymore, I'm gonna look at this as a different game, so to speak. I will still acknowledge it as Resident Evil 4, but I will be referring to it a little bit differently because my opinions on Resident Evil, where you compare the old school fixed camera games to this new direction, I definitely have strong opinions when it comes to that. But I don't want to talk about that today. Because even though this game, in my opinion, is not a good Resident Evil game, we can't deny that it's an absolute classic. And to answer the question, no, I don't think this game is overrated. I think this game is one of the best games of all time. It's easily in my top 3. There is not a single game that I would call a masterpiece, but this game right here is really close. It is closer than any game I've ever played. even compared to some of my most beloved games. No game comes as close as being declared a true masterpiece as this one. A word that is thrown around way too generously these days. If there was one game I could call a masterpiece, this would be it. I don't think this game is overrated. I think this game deserves all the praise it gets. Everything about it is truly amazing. Everything from the story, the characters, the gameplay, the weapons, the mechanics, the music, the environments, the bosses, the enemies. Everything about this game is truly phenomenal. There is so little that this game does wrong. And even things that people may see as flaws, such as the controls, the cheesy voice acting, in my eyes, aren't flaws. They're things that actually make it special, especially the cheesy voice acting, which is a huge part of the game's charm. What makes those cutscenes so great? What makes those characters so memorable? That were left ingrained in our minds 20 years later. Even the controls are great, even though to a lot of people are not up to today's standards. But to someone that can actually adapt to controls that don't quite play the same as every modern game out there, with all the same control schemes and control types and button inputs, you can actually learn to master this game. In no way do I ever feel hindered while playing this game. I don't ever feel at an unfair advantage playing this game, because all of its systems work perfectly fine. Yeah, sure, if you're not used to the game, you've never played it before, and you're so used to modern controls, it may take a little bit of getting used to, but that's the thing, you can get used to it. Think of it as breaking in a new pair of shoes. At first, they may not feel so comfortable, but once you get used to it, once you walk in them a little bit, get the feel for them, then they're so fucking comfy. It's like it's a part of your body. And that's what these controls are. They may seem clunky at first. They may seem outdated. They may not be as smooth as a modern game where anybody can pick it up and master it in 10 seconds. But if you put in that little bit of time, the controls are completely fine. When you compare it to the complexity and timing and patience that's required to master a game such as Mortal Kombat or any type of modern fighting game that requires such a investment to get good at, this is nothing. You can master these controls in a few play sessions. So yeah, in my opinion, this game is not overrated. It's not quite a masterpiece. It may have some small problems, but to me, they're just small problems. You take away those small problems, and it really could be a masterpiece. So I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you all next time. Sayonara.